Many years ago, before everything scattered like dry pepper in the wind, there lived in the quiet town of Benwela a young woman whose hands were blessed with calm magic. Her name was Amalia Chimanda, the tailor whose stitches were neater than morning dew and whose eyes carried peace deeper than the village river. When people passed her shop, they felt lighter, as if her smile could chase away their worries. And whenever angry customers came complaining that their clothes were too tight or too loose, Amalia would only smile softly and say, "Don't worry, I'll fix it." Her mother, Mama Selina, often told her, "My daughter, your calmness is your crown. Don't let anyone steal it." And truly, Amalia wore that crown with quiet grace, turning her little shop into a sanctuary of peace. Then came one blistering afternoon, when the sun burned like it had a personal vendetta against the earth. A man named Lazaro Matthews walked into her shop, holding a shirt with a torn pocket, and unknowingly his heart too. The moment he saw Amalia, he froze, staring as if a miracle had taken human form. When she greeted him with her soft voice, he stammered, "Afternoon, beautiful peace." From that moment, he began calling her Peace Woman, and he returned the next day and the next, bringing shirts that didn't need fixing, just excuses to see her again. Lazaro was everything Amalia was not: loud, confident, and full of laughter that filled the streets. He sold car parts, but spoke as though he owned Mercedes-Benz itself. He loved talking, even when nobody was listening, and Amalia's silence fascinated him. He would sit in her shop for hours, telling tales of his childhood, his business troubles, and an ex who shouted like a police siren. Amalia only smiled and said gently, "It is well." That calm response melted his heart every time. He would grin and say, "You, my peace woman, are silence in human form." Soon the gossip mill in Benwela began to spin. Neighbors teased, "Amalia, that man who talks like radio, is he your husband-to-be?" She only laughed shyly, her cheeks blooming like hibiscus, and returned to her sewing. Even Mama Selina noticed how her daughter now hummed love songs while stitching, how she smiled at her phone as if it whispered blessings. The mother simply said, "If he loves you for your peace, my daughter, may he also protect that peace." One quiet Saturday, Lazaro walked into her shop with trembling hands and no grand gesture, just a small ring and a heart full of promises. Kneeling beside her sewing machine, he said, "Marry me, peace woman, for I have had too much war in my life." The whole market rejoiced. The women shouted hallelujah, and Amalia's heart danced like drums at a harvest festival. Their wedding was loud but joyful. The choir sang like angels competing for a crown, and Lazaro danced until his shoes nearly begged for mercy. Through it all, Amalia smiled her gentle smile during the reception. Lazaro boasted proudly, "My wife doesn't talk much, but her silence speaks louder than noise." Everyone laughed and Amalia blushed, never knowing that one day those same words would sting like a curse. Their marriage began with peace. Amalia cooked, cleaned, prayed, and smiled, while Lazaro worked, talked, laughed, and brought home gifts. Each evening he would drop his phone, look at her lovingly, and say, "My peace woman, your face alone is my therapy." In the beginning, their evenings were sweet like ripe mangoes. Amalia and Lazaro would sit on their small balcony, eating rice and grilled fish, laughing softly about the big house they would one day build. Life seemed perfect, until slowly something in Lazaro began to change. It started like a whisper, then grew into a storm. The same silence he once called peace began to irritate him. When Amalia chose quiet over quarrel, he frowned and said, Amalia, are you even human? Say something now." When she served his food gently, he muttered, "You are too calm. Can't you spice life small?" One day, when she laughed softly at one of his jokes, he stared at her with irritation and said, "You laugh as if you're afraid of yourself." Amalia's heart cracked quietly. How could the same calmness that once drew him to her now feel like a crime? When she tried showing more emotion, he said she was dramatic. When she stayed quiet, he called her boring. She didn't even know which version of herself to be anymore. Once she tried telling a joke, but it fell so flat that Lazaro sighed and said, "Please, my dear, leave comedy for others." When Mama Selina came visiting, she could smell the tension before she even stepped through the door. She looked at her daughter and said softly, "My child, peace is good, but even peace needs laughter to survive." Amelia only nodded, pretending all was well, though her heart was tightening like thread pulled too hard through fabric. Then came the night that broke her spirit. They were eating dinner when Lazaro leaned back, smiling smugly, and said, "You know, sometimes I feel like I'm married to a pillow. Soft, quiet, always there but lifeless." Her spoon froze halfway to her mouth. She looked at him, eyes trembling, but he only laughed, thinking it was a joke. That night, sleep refused to visit her. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan spinning round and round, her mind whispering, "Maybe peace is not enough for some men." From that night, Lazaro began to change slowly, like a drizzle that pretends it will stop soon but keeps falling until the whole world floods. At first, Amelia told herself he was only stressed, that love just needed time. But soon, the scent of another woman began to linger on his clothes. He would come home late, laughing on the phone and hiding names behind the word business. When she asked gently, "Who was that?" he scoffed, "Don't start acting like a jealous wife, peace woman." But the truth is, silence can become a prison when the person you're keeping peace for keeps wounding your heart. Lazaro, who once said her calmness healed him, now called it annoying. He would shout, "Amalia, what do you even want? You never talk. You just sit there like a wall. Do you even have blood in your body?" Sometimes, just to test her, he would scatter the bed, drop his shoes in the kitchen, and throw his clothes all over the floor. When she quietly picked them up, he would shake his head and say, "You see? No single spark." A normal woman would have shouted by now. Even the neighbors noticed the shift. One morning, Aunt Lucia pulled Amalia aside and said, "My daughter, when some men say they want peace, they mean they want control. Don't let him turn you into furniture in your own house." Amalia smiled sadly and whispered, "He just needs time, Auntie. Thank you." But time, instead of healing, only deepened the wound. And then, one day, Lazaro's younger sister, Tanya, came to visit. That woman, she was a walking pepper soup, hot, sharp-tongued, and always stirring trouble wherever she went. Tanya arrived like a storm that refused to rest. She was hot, noisy, and always boiling over with drama. Her mouth never knew peace. She carried gossip the way some women carry handbags, always ready, always full. From the moment she stepped into the house, she found fault in everything. The curtains were too dull, the food too plain. Even the way Amalia breathed was a problem. One afternoon, she said with a smirk, "Sister-in-law, you are too gentle. How will this house ever be lively? Even the radio has gone quiet because of you." Amalia only smiled, choosing silence over confrontation. She cooked, cleaned, and served with her usual grace, hoping the storm would pass. But Tanya was not one to tire easily. She began whispering poison into her brother's ears at night, her words dripping like oil into water. "Brother, this your wife is like a ghost. Are you sure you didn't marry her out of pity?" she would say, not caring that Amalia could hear every word from the next room. And just like that, Lazaro began to change again. Slowly, fatally, he started spending more time outside, claiming meetings, business trips, and so-called boys' nights. He came home past midnight, reeking of perfume that wasn't hers. When Amalia asked softly, "Will you eat?" he scoffed and said, "Don't worry, the woman at the office takes better care of me." That sentence burned through her heart like a needle dipped in fire. But she did not cry. She simply whispered, "Okay," and went to bed. Yet her silence that night was not the calm kind. It was heavy, like thunder hiding behind the clouds. Then came the dinner disaster. It was a Sunday evening, and Amalia decided to do what she did best: love through service. She cooked his favorite meal, rice and chicken stew, spicy and rich. She decorated the table with candles, wore her best wrapper, and played soft music to welcome him home. But when Lazaro entered, he didn't even greet her. He sat, looked at the food and sneered, "Chicken again? You have no creativity, Amalia. You're even boring in the kitchen." Before she could respond, Tanya laughed loudly from the couch and added, "It's true, sister-in-law. Even your stew smells quiet and boring." That was the moment something deep inside Amalia snapped, like a thread that had been pulled too long. She looked at both of them sharply, her calm eyes suddenly carrying fire, and said, "Tanya, if this house is too quiet for you, the road outside still works, and Lazaro, if chicken is too peaceful, next time I'll serve you crocodile." Silence fell instantly. Lazaro blinked, lost for words. Tanya's jaw hung open. Without another glance, Amalia calmly packed her plates, walked into the bedroom and locked the door. The next morning, she rose early, dressed neatly, and went to church alone. The choir sang about love and grace, but her heart burned like dry pepper. When she returned, Lazaro sat in the living room scrolling through his phone. Without even looking up, he muttered, "You're changing, Amalia. I don't like this new tone." Amalia smiled, but it was a bitter smile. "Then maybe you should talk to the old Amalia," she said quietly. "She died from too much peace last night." That evening, as she walked past the hallway, she overheard his voice on the phone, soft, playful, and not meant for her. "You're different, Nadia. You're exciting. You're not like my wife who just stares at walls." Amalia stood frozen in the dark corridor, her heart pounding against her ribs. She whispered to herself, "So this is the reward for peace." From that moment, Lazaro's love turned cold as stone. He stopped pretending altogether. He laughed on the phone with other women, came home with lipstick stains, and accused her of being insecure. Once, when she tried to hug him from behind, he shrugged her off and snapped, "Don't start acting needy." When Mama Selina visited again, she could feel the chill in the air before she even stepped inside. "What is happening in this house, my daughter?" she asked softly. Amalia forced a smile and lied, "Nothing, Mama. Everything is fine." But her eyes, those once peaceful eyes, told another story. Amalia smiled at her mother and said softly, "It's just the weather, Mama. Nothing is wrong." But deep inside, her heart was already packing its bags, preparing for a journey. Only it understood something inside her had cracked, not loudly but deeply. And though it was broken, she knew it would not stay that way forever. That night, as she lay beside Lazaro, listening to his careless snores, she whispered a small prayer into the darkness. "Lord, give me wisdom, or give me wings." And that was the night peace began to prepare for war. They say the quiet ones are the most dangerous. And maybe that saying was born after someone met a woman like Amalia Chimanda and lived just long enough to tell the story, because the Amalia who woke up the next morning was not the same woman who used to whisper, "It is well," after every insult. No, this was a new kind of calm, the kind that comes before a hurricane. For weeks, she played her part in silence, her quiet becoming her greatest disguise. Lazaro thought she was still the same docile wife, but he didn't know that behind her calm face, a lioness was waiting for the right moment to roar. She began leaving the house early, claiming she had new sewing contracts. She would return home late, carrying small shopping bags and a mysterious smile that made Lazaro uneasy. One day he finally asked, "Where have you been going every day?" Amalia looked at him with eyes that no longer pleaded and said, "I go to places where peace is appreciated." He laughed it off, not knowing those words were a prophecy. A few days later, she went to visit her best friend, Rosa Baptista, a woman whose mouth worked faster than 10 radios combined and whose confidence could silence a room. The moment Rosa saw her standing there, eyes swollen and lips trembling, she exclaimed, "Ah, I knew it! You've been swallowing tears again. Come inside before I march to that man's shop myself." Amalia sat down, and for the first time in a long while, she spoke. She poured out everything, the insults, the late nights, the mysterious Nadia and Tanya's cruelty. Rosa listened, mouth open, eyes blazing. Wait, so you've been living like this and you didn't even slap small sense into that man? My sister, you're too calm. Even Jesus flogged people in the temple. Who are you not to shout? They both burst into laughter, deep, healing laughter that rolled out like music. For the first time in years, Amalia felt her chest lighten. Her friend then said, join the women's tailoring group in Luanda. They meet every week, share designs, take pictures, and celebrate each other. Amalia hesitated. I don't know anyone there. Rosa smiled. Good. You'll meet the woman you used to be. That week, Amalia packed her sewing machine, a few clothes, and her quiet determination. She told Lazaro she was moving to Luanda for business expansion. He barely looked up from his phone. Let her go, he told Tanya later. Maybe the city will teach her how to be interesting. But oh, Luanda didn't just teach Amalia how to be interesting. It taught her how to shine. In that bustling city, she found herself again. Her hands began to create bold, colorful dresses, not the shy designs of a woman afraid to be seen, but powerful pieces that screamed confidence. Her smile returned, stronger, freer, and radiant. The other designers admired her skill, and soon one of them helped her open an Instagram page for her fashion line. And just like that, the quiet tailor from Benuela began to rise, not through noise, but through the kind of grace that demands to be noticed. She named it Casad Pass by Amalia. Within weeks, her design started trending. People loved her story and her calm but classy aura. She even got invited to a small fashion event where she modeled her own outfits. Meanwhile, back in Benuela, Lazar was still busy misbehaving. He was seeing Nadia, the same woman who once sold phones in the market but now called herself business consultant. Nadia was full of drama and excitement, exactly what he thought he wanted. She laughed loudly, wore long wigs, and posted motivational quotes like, if he can't handle your fire, let him burn elsewhere. Well, he didn't know that elsewhere was about to be him back in Luanda. Amalia started getting attention from unexpected places. One of her clients, who was a journalist, invited her for a TV interview about peaceful women who rebuild after heartbreak. The interview went viral. Everyone praised her voice, her confidence, and her grace. The video caption read, silence is not weakness. Sometimes silence is preparation. When Rosa sent Lazaro the clip, he nearly dropped his phone. He was sitting in his car with Nadia when he saw his wife's face on media. She looked radiant, dressed in a bright orange gown with soft makeup and a calm smile. The presenter asked, so, Mrs. Amelia, what inspired your transformation? And she replied, pain has a way of turning peace into power. Nadia asked, this your wife likes forming saints, but Lazaro didn't hear her. He was too busy staring at the screen like someone who just remembered he left a diamond in the trash. The next day, gossip started flying in Benuela. Tanya's friends began tagging her in the video saying, your sister-in-law is trendy. Oh, she's glowing. See how beautiful she looks. Tanya felt heat rise to her face and she mumbled, she's just lucky. TV will soon forget her. But deep down, she was jealous. 2 days later, another shock came. Someone sent Lazaro a video clip. It was of Nadia at a hotel dancing closely with another man. The caption read, Soft's life baby with her real king. And there on her wrist was the same gold bracelet he bought for her last week. He threw his phone on the couch and screamed, so I left my peaceful wife for this circus. That evening he called Amalia for the first time in months. She picked up, and her voice was as calm as ever. Hello, Lazaro. He stammered, Amalia, I just saw your interview. You look different. Amalia smiled. That's because I remembered who I was before peace became punishment. Lazarus sighed. Can we talk, please? I think I made mistakes. Amalia laughed. You didn't make mistakes, Lazaro. You made choices and now the results are teaching you free lessons. Before he could reply, she added, don't worry, I am not angry. You gave me war and I decided to build an empire out of the ashes. With that, she ended the call. That night, she and Rosa drank juice on her balcony. Watching the Luanda skyline, Rosa asked, "So, what's next, Peace Woman?" Amelia smiled. "Next, I'll just keep sewing peace into dresses and letting them wear my story." See, if life were a market, Karma would be that market woman who never forgets to collect her balance. Because after months of pretending he didn't care, Lazarus Matthews' arrogance began to crack piece by piece like an overused plastic bowl. As if Naja's betrayal was not enough, everything around him started going wrong at once. They say when a man mocks the quiet strength of a woman, the universe often waits patiently to humble him. And oh, how the universe waited for Lazaro Chibanda, his once booming business. The pride of Benuela town began to crumble like a termite-eaten wall. Clients who used to beg for his time suddenly vanished like morning dew. Orders were cancelled, calls went unanswered, and whispers started crawling through the marketplace. "That's the man who cheated on his quiet wife," they said, shaking their heads. "The one on TV." The gossip spread faster than Harmattan fire. One client accused him of stealing money for parts that never arrived. Another returned a shipment swearing it was fake. His trusted assistant, a boy who once called him boss, with pride, packed up and left without a word. Nobody wanted to work for a man whose name now smelled like rotten fish in the sun. His fame had turned to shame, and just when he thought things couldn't get worse, Nadia, the firecracker he had traded peace for, became his punishment wrapped in perfume. She called him 10 times a day, demanding new wigs, flashy phones, and weekend trips. When he ignored her, she flooded the internet with sharp words disguised as captions. "Some men are lions only in their dreams. When peace leaves your house, chaos moves in and refuses to pay rent." Everyone knew who she meant. One evening, after yet another heated argument, Lazaro finally snapped. "Nadia," he shouted, "I wanted a woman with fire, but this fire is burning me alive." Nadia simply laughed, flipping her wig. "Then go back to your cold wife," she sneered. "Maybe she'll sew you a fire extinguisher." He stormed out, angry and broken, as he drove through the dusty road, shouting at himself. His fuel tank coughed its last breath. The car stopped dead. Mosquitoes gathered on his legs like a cruel choir. For the first time, he whispered, "God, what did I do to deserve this?" But far away in Luanda, Amalia was rising like dawn after a long storm. Her fashion brand, Casadas, had blossomed beyond her imagination. The once shy seamstress was now the talk of the city. Her designs, bold, colorful, unapologetic, were worn by local celebrities. Her radiant smile graced billboards, magazines, and every social feed. Rosa, her loyal friend and cheerleader, watched proudly as they folded new gowns one afternoon. "My sister," she said, "see what peace can do when you stop wasting it on people who don't deserve it." Amalia laughed softly. "It's funny, Rosa, I never tried to prove anything to him. I just started leaving. Then came the day the universe finished its lesson. A popular TV station invited Amalia to speak about self-worth and women's peace. She appeared live, glowing in her signature gold dress, Dot unaware that Lazaro was watching from a crowded beer parlor. The men around him pointed. "Isn't that your wife, bro?" One teased. Another laughed. "She don't blow." "My wife follows her page." Lazaro forced a smile, pretending not to feel the knife twisting inside. On the screen, Amalia sat tall, grace woven into every breath. The host asked gently, "Mrs. Amalia, what advice do you have for women fighting silent battles?" Amalia smiled, her voice calm but powerful. "Peace," she said, "is not about keeping quiet while dying inside. Peace is knowing when to walk away. Before silence becomes your prison." The bar fell silent. Even the men sipping beer nodded slowly. One muttered, "Wisdom they talk." Lazaro rose, dropped some cash on the counter, and walked out before the laughter started. At home that night, he paced the floor. Haunted not by Amalia's words, but by the truth that he had let peace slip through his fingers. There are some kinds of silence that don't bring peace. They bring memories that bite Every corner of Lazaro's house whispered her name. The faint smell of Amelia's fabric softener still floated through the air like a ghost that refused to leave. He could almost hear her soft laughter echoing from the kitchen, or her gentle voice humming gospel tunes as she washed plates. The peace he once found boring had become the music he longed to hear again, but pride sat heavy on his chest like a stubborn goat that refused to move. Meanwhile, Karma had already found a seat beside Tanya. Her boyfriend discovered she was the reason behind her brother's broken home and ended things with a single text. "I don't date troublemakers." Her church friends stopped greeting her, and her name became a proverb whispered in corners. Don't be like Tanya, the sister-in-law who mocked peace one evening she called her brother, tears running down her cheeks. "Lazaro, people are laughing at me. They say I destroyed your marriage." But Lazaro, tired and bitter, barked into the phone. "Did I not warn you to keep quiet? You and your loud mouth helped chase away the only woman who brought sense into this family." Tanya sniffled. "So it's my fault?" Lazaro replied coldly, "If your mouth were a car, it would need new brakes." A week later, the knock of reality came in the form of a letter. A court summons. Amelia had filed for legal separation. She didn't come herself. Her lawyer did. The letter was short but sharp enough to cut through his pride. "Mr. Matthews, this is to inform you that Mrs. Amalia Chibanda seeks separation based on emotional neglect and infidelity. Kindly prepare for property mediation." Lazaro stared at the paper like it was written in a language he had never learned. His hands trembled as he reached for his phone. When she finally answered after 3 rings, his voice broke. "Amalia, please, let's talk. Don't do this." Her voice came calm and distant. "Lazaro, I already talked. You just never listened." "I can change," he pleaded. "I'll do anything. I miss you." But Amalia's tone remained firm, the kind that carried finality. "You don't miss me, Lazaro. You miss peace, and peace doesn't return to a house that burned it." When she ended the call, Lazaro broke completely. For the first time since he became a man, he cried like a child, loud, unashamed tears that came from the kind of pain words can't hide. But life wasn't done teaching him. Because when the gods of balance wake up, they make sure every scale is set right. The man who once walked with a chest full of pride, greeted as Boss Lazaro, in the street soon found himself standing before his landlord, explaining why his rent was late. His business. Once the envy of many fell apart like dry bread, one morning the landlord dragged his belongings outside and said, "Boss, I respected you before, but respect cannot pay rent." That same day, his car coughed its last breath, and the mechanic told him repairs would cost half the money he didn't have. In desperation, he called Nadia, but her number was switched off, likely by another man who had taken over the sponsorship. Even Tanya, who once laughed at Amalia's calmness, had packed her things and gone back to Wambo, leaving him alone with his echoes. And that was when Lazaro finally understood the saying, "Peace doesn't make noise, but its absence screams." The house that once smelled of love now stank of regret. The meals were tasteless, the rooms too quiet. Even his thoughts mocked him. The same silence he once despised now roared in his ears louder than thunder. One lonely evening, as he sat on the edge of his bed, scrolling through his phone for distraction, he realized that everything he touched had crumbled, except the memory of the woman who once prayed, "Lord, give me wisdom or give me wings." One evening, as the sky turned golden over the city, Lazaro scrolled through Facebook to distract his lonely heart. But what he saw stopped him cold. It was a new video. Amalia's latest interview with a local fashion blogger, filmed inside her bright new studio. There she was, smiling softly while ironing a colorful dress. Her face glowed with calmness, the kind of peace that came after surviving a storm. The blogger asked, "So, how did all this begin?" Amalia smiled, her voice steady like a calm river. "It started with pain," she said, "but pain can teach you who you truly are. I stopped trying to please people who didn't value my quietness. Now, I use that same energy to rebuild my life." The comment section overflowed with love. This woman's grace is rare. May we never lose our peace to the wrong people. She's a golden queen. Lazaro didn't even realize when his eyes filled with tears. For the first time, he truly admitted it to himself. He didn't deserve her kind of woman. Days passed before he gathered the courage to move. Then, one quiet Saturday morning, he took a bus to Luanda. The man who once drove sleek cars now clutched a fading shirt and a small bag filled with apology gifts. Her favorite biscuits and a piece of fabric he had bought from the market. His heart pounded as he entered her studio. The place was bright and full of life. Assistants moved around, fabrics hung beautifully, and there, behind a desk, sat Amalia, radiant and unbothered. When she saw him, she didn't flinch. She simply blinked and smiled gently. "Good afternoon, Lazaro." He swallowed hard, his voice shaking. "Amalia, you look different. You look happy." Amalia nodded. "That's what peace looks like, when it's no longer competing with chaos." He shifted awkwardly, holding the biscuit box like a guilty child. "I came to say sorry. For everything, I was stupid. I didn't realize you were the one holding my life together." Amalia sighed softly. "Lazaro, I forgave you long before now." He lowered his gaze, shame burning his throat. "I don't know if," she interrupted gently. "You thought peace would always wait for you, but even peace gets tired of waiting." Silence hung between them, the kind that carried too many memories. Lazaro looked around her studio, his voice small. "You built all this without me." Amalia smiled faintly. "No, Lazaro, I built it after you. Pain became my raw material." He wanted to ask for another chance, but deep down, he knew it was too late. She had already healed in places he could never reach. Before leaving, he handed her the biscuits and the fabric. "I know it's not much," he murmured. Amalia accepted them with grace. "It's okay. You've already given me the biggest gifts." He frowned. "What gifts?" She looked straight into his eyes. "Freedom." Lazaro nodded slowly, speechless. Then he turned and left, his heart heavy with regret. That evening, he walked along the bright streets of Luanda, watching couples laugh and hold hands. For the first time, he realized how badly he had treated what other men prayed to find. Meanwhile, back in her studio, Amalia was closing up for the day when Rosa burst in, panting. "Guess who I saw outside looking like a lost goat?" She laughed. Amalia didn't even look up. "Let me guess that, Lazo." Rosa's eyes widened. "You saw him?" "Yes," Amalia replied calmly. "He came here to apologize." "So that's it?" Rosa asked. Amalia folded a piece of fabric neatly and said, "That's it. Some words don't need revenge, just distance." That night, the wind whispered gently through her curtains as she lay in bed. She thought about everything she had survived and smiled. She wasn't angry anymore, just grateful that she had found herself before she was completely lost. And somewhere across town, in a dim little room, Lazaro sat on the edge of his bed, staring at an old wedding photo. He picked up his phone, opened Amalia's business page, and typed a message. "I'm proud of you, Amalia. May your peace never run out." Amalia saw the message hours later. She smiled softly and replied with just one word, "Amen." And that was how it ended. Not with bitterness, but with understanding. Because sometimes peace doesn't return to the same house. It simply finds a new one within the heart. Thank you for listening to the story. Tell me, what lessons did you take from it? Share your thoughts in the comments and spread this story to someone who needs it. Until we meet again in another tale, may peace find you and never leave.